email. I haven't.
Yeah, I had a couple other questions on that too.
Yeah, I don't know the answers off the top of my head, or at least not to all of them, or I would have responded.
Recording in progress.
But you knew everything.
Good evening and welcome to the May 21st, 2025 Yarmouth Planning Board meeting. I am Joanne Crowley, Chair. The public is always welcome to attend our meetings in person or via alternative public access provided on the Town of Yarmouth website. Our meetings are generally held on the first and third Wednesdays of the month, but additional meetings are added when needed. I'll begin by taking roll call. Susan Britta. Deirdre Gaquin.
Here.
Will Rubenstein. Jim Saban.
Yeah.
Peter Slovak.
Here.
Ken Smith.
Here.
Joanne Crowley, present. Seeing we have a quorum, I'll now call the meeting to order, and I would ask that you join me in the pledge.
Ready to pledge, Madam Chair.
I'll make a note that Mr. Rubenstein has entered.
Ready to pledge. Sorry.
Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm sorry. Sorry. I meant, what are you doing?
So the first item on our agenda this evening is the continuing discussion with regard to the development of our local comprehensive plan. This evening, we will have some updates and we'll have some discussion on the LCP Draft 2, which was in our packets that Kathy provided to us this week. I think, Kathy, you're going to give us maybe an update on the mixed-use studies as well, or
Sure.
if that's appropriate. We're also going to look at the schedule and timeline that Kathy has been working with our consultants with, and then there'll be some discussion with regard to the timing of the special town meeting in the fall. So I'll pass it on to you, Kathy.
Sure. Been working with Jeff Bagg from BSC Group, and they've really taken comments I think that you guys had from the first draft and really worked to incorporate them and simplify it a little bit into the second draft. I realize that this information was only given to you on Monday, and it's still a lot of information to digest. A large sections of it are actually the action items which you've already gone through, and we really don't need to revisit. But we can talk a little bit more about the schedule, but I think maybe just talking with Jeff, getting him on to just give a brief overview of where he stands and what additional things he might need to do, and then ask you guys kind of some general comments that you have. We're hoping that we can do something that we did similarly before, where you guys got the copy and then you provided comments back to me, and then I forwarded them to Jeff for inclusion.
Jeff, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Hi, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can. Good evening. Thanks for being with
Great.
us.
Yep, thanks for being there. And I definitely wanted to thank Kathy in particular for her hard work on this and sort of the tag team that Kathy and Joanne did to present it to the select board. Really important kind of steps that the town is taking to shepherd this through. So, Kathy provided us with the presentation that went to the select board, and then the follow-up email and we're working through some of those comments. We're almost done with incorporating those comments from the select board into this version, but that's really valuable, and it's great to just have the select board getting those continuous updates. I think it was either Kathy or Joanne said, getting them involved now is going to be really beneficial in the long run, rather than them coming in later and asking for changes when it's closer to town meeting. It'll be harder to incorporate some of them. I apologize for not being able to get the draft sooner, but I think, as Kathy said, what we would hope to do is kind of go over tonight sort of the structure. We restructured the document. If there's anything that you've gleaned so far that you want to share with me or Kathy tonight, that would be great. But I think if we could get comments by May 30th, I think that would be helpful for us in terms of a timeline, which I'll go over a little bit later. If that's reasonable, kind of to have you all thumb through it and make comments would be really helpful. I think I have a couple introductory notes, and then I'm happy to share my screen and kind of go over the way the document's set up. But I think one of the key requests, probably not the first time I've asked this, but I think, one of the really important things that you guys can help us with is if there's something missing. The way it's structured now is that there's recent actions by the town, and wherever we can, we're trying to briefly describe those and provide a link or a summary of those items. And it's really the things that are sort of globally impactful to the town. There is this impossibility, which we will face with this document, which is listing every single project. And I think we talked about that as a group, but I think one example is like with the Community Preservation Act. I think they do so much and they fund so many different types of projects, and I think that's one example where we want to capture the essence of the importance of what CPA is doing, and maybe there's an overall dollar figure that we can refer to on money that's been spent on CPA on various projects, but we have to kind of resist the temptation to list out all the CPA projects that were funded, especially because we're not just looking at 1 year, we're looking back like 10. So things like that. And then obviously words, the way this is written is really important. So we'll take feedback on that, but I did want to capture, I think what Joanne said, or no, it was Kathy, said that the key issues are pretty much the same as the document that's been worked and sent around with the planning board and others. So that's important to know. And then the action items, we've kind of bifurcated them off to the targeted action plan. So they look a little different, but the text hasn't really actually changed too much on those. So I just wanted to say, that we should be mindful that if we're going through those, we're wordsmithing things that you guys have already looked at. So it's really kind of the core of the structure of this that we're looking to get the feedback on. Then the housing chapter and the capital facilities chapter, you're seeing those for the first time. So those are kind of like first drafts. And just in speaking with Kathy, I think we're probably going to want to work through those. The housing chapter, one of the things that we'll talk about briefly is just some of the data alignment. We're referring to the housing production plan, which is a core document, but within it refers to data from 2020 and 2021, and here we are, in 2025. So we want to potentially pull through data that we can update to today. So like I think Kathy's example was like the median income. We can probably showcase that in terms of 2025. We want to refer back to the housing production plan, which has a different date for that data, but we don't want to disrupt the value of the housing production plan and all those findings and resources that were based on that timeline. The capital facilities chapter is going to need some additional tuning, and I think what we're looking to do is try to align the town's existing efforts on the CIP to kind of refine a list of projects that are in the SIP, and then align them with the projects that are coming through in the LCP, and that's an exercise that we're going to double down on over the next couple of weeks, because those two chapters are things that we want to get a second draft completed before it goes to the Cape Cod Commission, and we'll talk about that when we talk about the timeline. Two last things is just the executive summary. My understanding, the best way to approach the executive summary is it kind of comes at the end. We have a sort of a placeholder. We have a draft going, and we can continue to add to that. But I think it will come together a little bit later. And I think I don't think that the executive summary is critical for the draft plan to go off to the Cape Cod Commission. But we can have that conversation in a little while when we talk about the schedule. And then the last thing, we probably will be backfilling a few of these sections with some statistics or data and trying to figure out where we could identify a trend. The town did a lot of work on this as part of the visioning process, and so there are a few places where we're holding placeholders for where we want to insert kind of that critical data source or the trend. And so we just didn't quite get there with this draft for that. So I think with that, I guess I would take questions now, or should I just kind of show the document. I take any guidance you might have here.
Kath, how would you like to?
I think you can go over the structure, and then you guys can talk about any initial comments you might have, and then, of course,
Yeah.
we can then talk about the schedule.
Okay, great. And for anyone watching at home, or I don't know if there's people in the room, but this was included in the planning board's packet. So this version is available for people to look at, and it's embedded in that agenda. Just today, I kind of started draft 3, just for today to start. If there's any feedback I get directly during the meeting, I'm going to try to capture it. And of course, I found a couple like typos and things just right after I sent it. But in terms of these 2 pages, the kind of layout is the table of contents, and I just highlighted under natural systems and water resources. We kind of made a structural change here that I just wanted to highlight. In the earlier versions and in that key issues document, water resources was just one topic and one goal. And what we really see is a value to kind of carve these up a little bit, and under water resources create three different subjects, 3 different topics. And through the feedback from the select board, we're going to put wastewater up first. Water supply, is a really critical topic unto itself, and so carving it off creates a separate goal and separate action items. And by doing this, it made the rest of the document run a little more smoothly. And then fresh and salt water. So I just want to kind of highlight that structural change. The rest of this table of contents has largely stayed intact until we get to chapter 4. That was a chapter that the document that you guys have, that'll be the first time you're seeing kind of a summary of housing. And I'll talk about that in a minute when we're thumbing through. And then the capital infrastructure and facilities is a draft 1 chapter. And then under chapter 8 appendices, I just wanted to continue to make a note that we will try to put together a glossary of terms. I think this request came up by the select board, and I think it's very good and reasonable. I think it's going to take some time to figure out which terms we include in that, but it is going to be something that we agree makes sense to add. So the document has no graphics, no pictures, and kind of just minimal formatting. And we think that this is probably the best way to transfer the information back and forth for now. And I think if the planning board's agreeable, this is probably the way that we would transmit it to the Cape Cod Commission for their review of the first draft, just because once we get into formatting, every time there's a change, it kind of has a ripple effect through formatting. And so just want to make that point. Here, the note is that the section will continue to be edited. I think, we kind of have some basic information, we have a community overview, and then we have these key themes. When you're reviewing it, feel free to add comments or suggestions or thoughts on the executive summary, but I just wanted to make sure I noted that it's kind of a living portion of the LCP that we're going to keep chipping away at. And then, sorry, the second note here is just that we talked about infographics, and we had some at the first community meeting, and I think the executive summary, I think we pegged it as maybe ending up being like 10 pages, and I think it can be an easy to read kind of overview and summary of the LCP, and this is where infographics will be really helpful and beneficial to the members of the public who want to really kind of get that snapshot. Chapter 1 is the community vision and has not
Jeff,
changed.
Jeff, if I could just pause for a second.
Yeah. Yes.
I think some members of the board would just like to jump in here for a second.
Great, sorry.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Rubenstein.
Thank you. Hi, Jeff. Thank you again for all the work you're doing. Just to make the next part of our conversation easier, when you share your screen, could you do it maybe single page and make it bigger? Both for us watching on a screen here and also for the future viewers, because the quad view is really nice, but you can get lost in where you're actually talking about.
Sure.
And that leads me to my next point, which is I assume at some point you're going to put page numbers in the actual table of contents, but you haven't done that yet because we don't have all the pages done.
Yeah, we will definitely do that.
Okay.
That would be just critical, and it'll be hyperlinked once once we get this
Sure.
kind of version situated, we'll have it as a PDF, and you can kind of hyperlink to the section that you're interested in. Yeah.
Of course, but even for, and you, look, this is tricky because there's nobody walking this planet except for Kathy and maybe Madam Chair, who know this document better than you do at this current stage. The challenge is you're now giving it to, civilians who don't know it as well, even though we know it decently well. So if at all possible, the navigating here is really key as we're trying to just be efficient with our time and giving you timely review, to the extent that it's possible to get a table of contents with page numbers sooner rather than later will just help everybody. But again, that's just a request. It's certainly not a demand. The second thing is you mentioned, and I think you're right, to break out the water resource. I'm looking at the table of contents under Chapter 3 Natural Systems. I totally understand wastewater management and water supply, but when I read the words fresh and salt water, I went, "Arr!" It's just out of context. I know what you're trying to say, but it doesn't feel like a topic heading to me. It's missing a word. It's just written strangely. Maybe you're trying to say fresh and salt
Resources?
water resources, and I know you don't want to be redundant, but it's just a little bit of a needle scratch. And that's not a bad thing because it got my attention. But I just wanted to mention it because it just doesn't flow, pun intended. Okay. I think that was just really what I wanted to say just about the table of contents. And I apologize if this is too nitpicky, but I am, again, very much respectful of all the time and effort that you've put into this and will continue to. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, Will. I think your comments are great for the table of contents. Again, what I think Kathy and Jeff and I have thought about as the best way to process individual comments will be, we're going to take this home, we're going to understand it better tonight. And anything that's a 10,000-foot flyover that we see, we really need to adjust. It's not the words, it's not the content. It's more or how it's organized. We need to get that back to Kathy and Jeff this evening to the degree we can. But individual comments, the expectation that I have and Kathy and Jeff have is that we will look this over carefully and provide all of those comments directly back to Kath, and then they will begin to incorporate all of those.
You would like that in writing,
Yeah,
as opposed
yeah,
to tonight in
that's
this
correct,
format?
that's
Okay, Madam
correct,
Chair,
yeah.
that makes sense. Thank you.
And I will try as best I can not to do my silly nitpicking too, Will.
I take the word silly out. I don't think it's
No,
bad.
For me. But I did have, I may have lost my train of thought here. Oh, no. If the executive summary, Jeff, is really not really pertinent until we're done, or we're at the end stages, why don't we just leave it blank? Can we? I mean, why does the Cape Cod Commission need to see it? I don't think they do.
Because they don't want to read the whole document.
No, because we're not going to have an executive summary until we're very done.
Yeah, so let's just not worry about it. Did we lose
Put
him?
it in invisible ink, I think, is what Madam Chair is saying.
Yeah. Did we lose Jeff?
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Now we can, yeah. Yes.
I'm here. Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah, I think that's, if that's your preference, we can take it out. I would like to keep a version going so that we can make notes and identify things that
Yeah.
should live there.
Behind the curtain.
But for
Yes.
the Cape Cod Commission, I don't see a problem with removing it for that purpose.
Okay, great. Anyone
Okay.
else?
Yeah, and I'll take any feedback. I think just getting into the grammar and words might be a little challenging to do as a group in this meeting, but I think if there's structural questions or issues, or if there's something glaringly wrong in particular, you can tell me that, and then missing is also, that's the task at hand. I am I'm fine with all this discussion too, so I have no concerns with that. I shifted over to the growth policy. This is a one-page view. This is about as big as I can get it, I think, and still see it tonight. Is this sufficient, or is it Would it still be
It's better than the
Google
quad view, thank you, Jeff. And what page is
Okay.
that? Just to follow along?
Docs? Page 9.
Page 9, thank you.
I'll try to match it with the screen here,
So,
if I
well,
can.
The last thing I'm trying to do is make you do more work here, Kathy.
Madam Chair, can I go back to page 8 for a quick second?
Sure.
And I think maybe I'm out of line because I think you want me to give you this in writing, but when I look at the bullets, some of the things that we're saying here are some of the things that we tend to get most criticized for. Communicates effectively and transparently. If there's nothing I've heard more about in the town in the last 6 months is how lousy we are at communicating. Has a business-friendly approach balanced with community goals and interests. If there's another thing I've heard complaints about is that we're not business-friendly. And the last one is, has modernized library facilities. Our library was built in the 1800s.
This is our vision.
Right, but
This is what we want.
I think this is pulled directly from the vision plan, Jim.
Yeah, I understand
Correct.
that.
Well, it's the thing that has already been printed and put out into the world.
This is what we want to have.
I understand that.
So what's the-
I'll send you my notes. Never mind.
I'm sorry.
I'll send you my notes.
Yeah, and we did keep it in. It's verbatim of the vision plan that's been kind of adopted by the town. I think I think the important thing, Jim, is that it's the aspirational goal. It's the things that the town wants to achieve, and then everything from here on out in the LCP is intended to try to accomplish those things. So it is that forward looking vision. But if you have additional comments, I'd be happy to hear them.
Yeah, I'll send them along.
I
Just-
think,
just-
I think, Jim, with regard to that, I think just a simple, I'm just doing this really quickly, and I know we're not going to editorialize tonight, but a simple thing might be, as a great place to live, Yarmouth is a town that wants to improve.
Or strives to.
As a great place to work, a town strives to, so, whatever. We can, so we make it look like it is truly a vision and a goal.
Right.
There's a way to do that.
That's kind of where it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can completely understand. You're looking at it from someone who's maybe not been involved in the vision process, and we're making statements about who we are right now. That's not the case. Yeah.
Right.
Good point. Okay, Jeff, back to you.
Okay, yep. And so page 9 is where I was going to start, the growth policies. So again, this is probably something that will change a little bit more, but this is based on the community input that we've gotten so far, and based on the review, of the planning board and bringing this to the select board. And so this was kind of drafted previously, but I think, there's always the opportunity to kind of keep looking at it. Again, but this has been kind of written, together as a group. This was drafted over the past couple of months. I did add, and this is page 10 in the version that you have. I just added this afternoon. This was so the image, the graphic, is not in your packet, but this was what we presented at the second community meeting. This is part of what we'll start to see in this chapter 2, the community goals. And I've just made the placeholder that identifying the community goals suit the local needs, but also consistent with the goals of the regional policy plan. That's the directive from the Cape Cod Commission. So that's the objective of this chapter, is just to show that the community goals are aligned with the Cape Cod Commission goals. And this was the early graphic that we started to put together for that. So I wanted to put something in there because we have had this discussion a little bit about this.
Jeff, I'd just like to go back to the growth policy. And again, I'm sorry to revisit this, but as I read it again, we don't mention anything about Yarmouth Port. And Yarmouth Port has its own little commercial district. I mean, we have a major health provider up there now, Urology Associates, which the planning board was very involved in getting that, make that happen. We have some professional parks where IFA is, and some others on Willow Street. I'd like to try to work in some language that talks about Yarmouth Port, maybe not that it's a place where there can be growth, but that there can be some attention paid to further development and redevelopment.
There's literally a 6A there is a 6A improvement corridor study
For
program.
the street.
It's the village center.
I just meant maybe there's a way to mention that, because that clearly won't be done by the time this is done.
Well, it's in here, it's in this.
No, I know, I just meant maybe this could be a relevant.
Yeah,
part to
I'm just
stick it in
thinking,
as
it
a
is a commercial corridor with inns and restaurants. Again,
Bank.
the bank, the professional park, and it's like a mini commercial
Post office that I
corridor.
go to frequently.
Well, that's technically, oh, that one, I'm thinking of Comaquid.
No, ma'am,
No,
not
no,
that one.
no, not that
The other
one.
The one I go to.
Historic sites, it's where many of our historic, so I'm just throwing that out there, that I want to be sensitive to that part of town in terms of, we should be looking at what kind of a growth policy we think maybe that segment of town might be different. It is different than the other parts of town.
Yeah, we can look at that. There was very good conversation about 6A Yarmouthport at the second community meeting, and I think not to put words there yet, but it was like really preserve the unique characteristics of that section. So I think that's kind of the growth policy is intended to kind of, you want to preserve and enhance, but it's not necessarily like grow it immensely. So I think we can put some
Perfect.
words there, and I think it is important to acknowledge
Yeah.
that area.
Great, that's perfect.
And again, I think there's opportunity, as you take this home, and reading it before bedtime, adding other things into. That's the whole point of this version. Is I think we're at the point where we can start to kind of like add elements back in where they're appropriate. So I think that makes sense to me.
And the only other thing I would add to that is the Old Kings Highway Commission and its relationship to everything north of 6A. I don't think we pay enough
North of
attention.
6.
Above 6, I'm sorry. Thank you. Do we need to pay any more attention to their requirements and their regulations and how that may, we don't really talk much about it at all.
Well, we mention it in our historic districts. I guess with the growth policy, this is kind of where do you want to see, not just tiny little growth, but real growth.
Yeah.
And I think
Okay.
that really is Route 28.
Yeah.
I mean, and then the last sentence is, as our community grows and evolves, ensure the protections of historic and cultural resources, promote resiliency and stewardship. So we're talking about, we want to maintain our historic. I'm a little concerned how people on 6A might view if we're like saying, we want to see a lot of growth in your commercial corridor along
They don't.
6A. They don't.
No, but.
What historic preservation,
And enhance,
So
because
maybe
there's
that's where
enhancement.
We
Enhancement's the
specifically
word.
mention Yarmouthport then. I mean, we're listing neighborhoods that are in South Yarmouth and West Yarmouth. Maybe we mention specifically, ensure the protection of historic, I don't know. It's just a suggestion. Somewhere, I think Yarmouthport's going to feel left out.
I agree.
which they want to be.
Well,
As far as, they,
In my personal experience.
I would think that the general perception of the north side of the town is, we like it just the way it is,
Okay.
don't
All
fix
right.
it.
except for the 6A improvements that they also would like
If
to
we
have.
recall the Davenport project, simply creating 14 houses, and that's not anywhere near the village of Hallett's, whole area.
Yep.
So I mean, there's really no place for, well, there might be, but economic growth along the 6A corridor. So I think really the only idea is, preservation and promotion of historic features.
I think the growth might be, and one of the comments that came up was, having top-of-shop housing over some of those existing commercial, allowing that as an option. Which it is allowed now with one, you can have one, but,
Okay.
If you go back to that desire to have a history museum, most likely somebody who wants to create a history museum in the town is going to want to put it on the north side. That's our historic side of town, so that's why,
Bass River's very historic as well.
well, you and I agree to that, but I'm sure the people on the north side don't.
It's also where the Revolutionary War Monument is going.
But for
That's right.
valid reasons, they had the muster field.
Of course, I'm
That
just
was the
saying
muster
it.
field. Right.
Yes, it's just chicken and the egg.
So maybe just simply making comment that, alluding to the fact that the north side is historic and preservation is that really kind of is part of economic growth, if you think about it.
It is, yeah.
As we preserve it, lots of people go on history tours and want to see, the sisters and the little plaques on the walls and
And we want the inns, all those beautiful inns, to stay there and be healthy and be successful.
If you look at it that way, historic preservation is economic development.
Okay? Sorry for the interruption, Jeff.
Apologize. It's good discussion, and I think we'll, put together some. Continue to think about the feedback that you want to offer in the growth policy, and obviously we'll talk to Kathy, and then there'll be another chance to review all of this, and so this is not the final version, but I think it's a good opportunity. And I don't actually think there's that many more sections that are sort of subjective elements. So I think we can keep moving through, but I would appreciate any other thoughts you have on the growth policy as we move forward. The community goals we talked about. So the structure right now is just set up where in the first version, we laid it out landscape. We talked months ago about changing the orientation of the document to portrait. One thing that we haven't really figured out yet is if we want to do 2 columns or just one kind of like regular column of text. We're gonna shelve that for a little bit longer, just to make sure that we can get through sort of the content that the board wants to see, and then getting the draft to the Cape Cod Commission, and then I think we'll revisit kind of this, whether we want to have 2 columns. But what's my point here is that the way the document, the LCP in general, will flow is we really see like full pages or half pages of images, depending on whether it's a chapter or a section. That'll be the way, along with color coding, to kind of get the reader to be able to find their way through the document. We had taken a shot at that in the first version, and it was working okay, but I think this next version, we're really gonna, chapter 3 is the longest chapter of the whole document. So we'll have this kind of clear introductory page that tells you you're in chapter 3. And then within it, as you go through the different systems, we'll be using page breaks, photos, and other ways to kind of break it up. But in my opinion, it breaks up a lot better now than it did before. So we have an introduction. I did notice that in the version that I sent, so I'm on page 12, there was just a missing sentence. The chapter is broken down into 3 sections, so natural, built, and community systems. And just to give the reader that overview of what chapter 3 encompasses. So this is kind of standard language. What we did want to say is that we did create the chapter with the goal of being easy to read as a summary and introduction to complex matters. This is residents and business owners and town officials and town meeting members who will use it as a guide. Wherever possible, we're going to use links to get people to more detailed information, plans, and assessments. So we're kind of just trying to preview that for the readers that, maybe just pick this up for the first time. Then as we go into the systems, so this page will be, able to be identified. This will introduce the natural systems. So I do have a placeholder here for inserting some baseline data and trends that will cover some of the statistics that we want to capture here. And then as you see, the big change that we wanted to make or proposed to make is with water resources, breaking it down into the 3 subjects I mentioned. But so with wastewater and all the preceding sections, we're really seeking to kind of give a concise but helpful overview, sort of a summary. This is background information or introductory information in this section that can be helpful for readers to get the glimpse of what they're gonna look at. And then for the key issues, this is pretty much the language that the board has passed around and circulated amongst different groups. I pulled it through so it lands here in this section, the key issues. And then for each of the preceding, elements that we kind of will go through, then we created this recent actions by the town related to whatever the subject is. So this is where you'll see more concise attempts to kind of capture just the facts, kind of to summarize some of the recent actions that really are impactful to the town overall. And so for this section, the comprehensive wastewater management plan is really this guiding document. some of these will have links. This one should have a link to it. We can link to the information that's available on the town's website to get people right to the more detailed information. But this is a summary, this is 4 paragraphs to try to describe, two decades worth of work. And kind of to kind of talk about how, looking ahead, there's going to be many more phases.
More decades after that.
Or decades after that. And that comes through in the action plan for sure. But this was the way that we think we can get a much more concise document. And then to kind of show you kind of where we go, like with water supply, we take the opportunity to kind of talk about the drinking water supply in these 3 introductory paragraphs. And this is the hard part, is that we want to give the reader just enough information, but not make it overwhelming so that they don't continue to read. So this is where, if you have input, Kathy spent a lot of time helping kind of craft these sections. So just please know that she's been able to get through most of this document with me. And then we pulled through the key issues. And so again, not to be too repetitive, but these key issues have been identified, kind of reviewed, wordsmith. You guys went through the exercise to change the wording and format of all this, and so that's pulled through. And then we get into the recent actions about water supply. And so you can see here, this really probably should be on its own page break, kind of pull it down to the next page. But this is PFAS, the water conservation policy, and then the water system master plan. So in red text on my screen that I'm sharing, I added this. As I was prepping, I realized that this wasn't in there and it should have been. But in 2019, the town completed a water system master plan. And so with the link to this document, it provides you that Kleinfelder report, which has the extremely detailed information about the water supply system, the water facilities, and all the future-oriented action items that are embedded in there. And so that's in the version I'm sharing on my screen. It's not in your version yet that you have in front of you. And then finally, the freshwater and saltwater systems, if you will. This is kind of the structure that allowed us to pull this out, identify the key issues, and the recent actions by the town related to kind of those water systems. Previous to this, it was one goal grouped together with one long set of actions. And I think this really is demonstrated in the targeted action plan as to separate these out. They're really distinct issues, and all 3 are pretty important enough to be kind of discussed separately. So from here, I don't know that I'll go word by word, but we have wetlands and wildlife plant habitat. It's the same structure. Open space falls under the natural systems, and I'm on page 22. So here we're showcasing the Parkers River Landing Project, the open space plan. The tendency would be to keep going and add more and more projects, but so many are summarized in the open space and rec plan that we really want to get people to point it directly to that document. We did kind of capture the last paragraph under this section is that kind of a summary since 2015 of some of the really key acquisitions and projects that have been completed for open space. Again, this LCP is not the in-depth kind of review of that, but it's a showcase to kind of show the key ones. And then the last piece of the natural systems is the coastal resiliency. So here I am highlighting, so I'm on page 24, I'm highlighting that we want to insert a couple of really important sort of baseline data and statistics here. We started to kind of capture that with the stuff from the 2017 hazard mitigation plan. The town's in the process of updating that. So we want to figure out what we can pull from the new plan versus the old plan. The key issues, again, are you've seen those. And then really the recent actions, this is a good opportunity. This is a good example page for us to showcase all the hard work that the town has done. So the community resilience, starting in 2019, the climate change vulnerability assessment in 2023, the low-lying road study between 2021 and 2024, and then the action grant for kind of the Route 28 South area. Here's the housing mitigation plan, and then we crammed in kind of the 10-year dredging and beach nourishment permit. And so that is a good showcase of all these really important projects each of which has detailed information available for people who really want to dive in. And that's kind of the structure that we are trying to maintain for the rest of the document. And so built systems, we would imagine a half-page photograph, some way for the reader to know that they're shifting. And so we can use colors and some of the icons that we had from the first plan. So we should be able to highlight for the reader that this is shifting to built systems with a kind of a description based on the Cape Cod Commission regional policy plan. And then this section, I'm sure the group is going to want to review and make comments and edits on, but we didn't really have a land use discussion in the first version. So in the first paragraph is where we want to kind of capture really basic information about the population, but then take a quick trip down memory lane. We're going back 12,000 years and kind of trying to summarize that tremendously long period of time briefly, because there's a lot of information available about this, but we want to kind of just put something in the LCP that helps people kind of flash back. And then what I was finding from putting this together is, and I'm kind of shifting between page 28 and 29, but 1999 through 2012, it's a long time ago, but those are core pieces of zoning that the town put in place that really have kind of situated the land use that you're seeing today. And as you all know, many of these, we might want to be looking at these again, as Route 28, all the improvements are happening with the sewer and all the Mass DOT TIP project. I think the goal and all the action items are really looking at, these again in 2025 and beyond to find out if they're providing the things that the town wants. But it is really important to anchor the land use section in those actions. And then we're highlighting the key issues and then the recent actions by the town. So, the growth incentive zone, the seasonal employee housing, we talked about putting it here or talked about putting it in housing, but it's here right now. The mixed use analysis, the Matakees project is here. And there could be others, but these were the high level ones that really are related to land use in the community design. So transportation and connectivity, it's a lot of the same. I think here we have some baseline data we want to insert about tourism, traffic volumes, and trends. But the key issues have been vetted. Doesn't mean there's not room for changes on those, but I do want to just keep saying that those have been done. You guys have looked at that a couple times. And then the key actions. So here we're trying to start to identify that this document will be published in the end of 2025, but we're looking ahead a little bit. So in 2026 is the projected completion of parts of the rail trail. And then we're kind of going backwards down the number line here to 2025 is the Station Ave corridor study. 2025 is also the Bass River Bridge project. And the Route 6A corridor improvements, even though they're not completed, they've been well underway, and we're linking to kind of the webpage that the town has available, which in theory should be updated. So even as we publish the PDF of the LCP, at the end of the year, as long as that webpage is maintained, people can still access that information. The Vision Zero, so that's the Cape Cod Commission project. We are adding some information about the Regional Transit Authority. I think there's not a lot of information, available in terms of planning efforts for public transportation, but this is something that is currently happening. It's talking about the 15 Cape towns and talking about public transportation. So 2023, the Mass DOT held their 25% design year. That's the most up-to-date information we really have about the 28th project, and then the airport master plan. So climate mitigation and energy, similar. I don't think I'll read through this. I think this is where, I think I would shift to the board kind of taking time to review some of this. Page 36 is waste management. So we're identifying the committee, the residential waste drop-off, and then I can see, actually I'm on page 36, I can see that we we'll have this regional commercial transfer station information to add. That is obviously not right there, but it will be. So I was looking, Kathy, for some information about that. I think I would like to ask for a little bit of help finding, the most relevant place to source some of that information.
I tried too, and I didn't find anything. Maybe that's something we can work with Roby Whitehouse on. She's our assistant DPW director, so.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. And in all honesty, I remember seeing a presentation from Director Colby about the transfer station somewhere in my research. Maybe it was 2023 or 2024, and I was trying to find that at least it was a presentation to the select board. And I think that there is at least a way to get kind of that generalized piece of information to fill this section from that presentation. Recent actions, in some of these, there are not a ton of recent actions, and I think that's okay. But I think the waste management one is an example where there's just not that long list like there is for land use. And you'll see that as you go through the document. And then shifting again, we put it in purple. Will be color coded, we'll have an image here, and we'll help people realize that they're shifting to the community systems, which is really the culture, people, and economic activity of the area. And that's the way that the Cape Cod Commission kind of broadly defines this. And the first kind of subsection is the character and cultural heritage. And Kathy helped me with this section because this was an area that we made a pretty big change from the first draft. And what we were finding in that first draft, we were kind of had a section on the fire department, and we talked about the type of work that the fire department does, and the number of employees they have, and the police department, and the police force, and the libraries, and what we see in other LCPs that have been certified by the commission is that they're not doing that. This section is really not. It doesn't need to be this deep inventory of all the municipal sort of services, and that might bleed into the next section. Actually, I apologize. I think I'm getting ahead of myself. That's actually town services. So here, Kathy helped me kind of frame this in terms of the cultural and historic elements. We talk about the Tourism Preservation Fund because that is really instrumental. That was a really important thing, and the types of projects that it funds really feeds into this cultural section. The key issues, again, there's 3 that have been identified thus far. I'm not sure that we'll end up with just 3, but I think those are the 3 that have been kind of vetted and bounced around. And then kind of starting with today, the 2025, we have the Town Common Feasibility Study, which was just funded by your town meeting, the Public Arts Committee, the Revolutionary War Monument. I added in some of the festivals as a observer of Yarmouth, looking at the Seaside Festival and the sand sculpture and many others that Kathy was really putting in there. Those are emblematic of the cultural activities that are happening, and we really think that this is a good place to put them there to kind of showcase that these are actions that the town is taking or supporting that help create the character that you have. And so it's not a perfect fit, but I think it is important to kind of think about those types of things. And here's CPA and the Historical Commission. So I know a section that will be a little bit of a work in progress is the economy. We did try to pull sort of standardized, census data to put in here, but I'm not quite sure it's where you would all want it to be. We are flagging. Let's see, I'm on page 43, and I am flagging insert additional baseline data and trends aligned with the 2020 data sheet. So the data sheets that were produced for the visioning plan actually had a pretty good sort of bulleted list of some of it's kind of a mix of data and trends. And so I think we want to resurrect some of that and put it in here. We just didn't get to finish that before we gave you the draft. I'm scrolling back up. Actually, no, sorry. I'm making everyone sick. Going down to page 44. This was one thing I just wanted to highlight for the planning board, and it's related to the data sheets and trends. So right now, the chapter is set up so we've identified key issues, and those have come from a variety of sources. Those are the interviews with businesses and stakeholders. Those are the community input and your direct input. Some of the issues are very similar to the trends that were identified in that data sheet. And starting to kind of decipher the difference between a data point and a trend, is something that the economy section really highlights, that we need to sharpen a pencil on that a little bit. But I think the example is the bullet that describes the heavy reliance on seasonal tourism with limited, high quality, diverse year-round jobs. So that's perfectly identified as a key issue. It was also identified as a trend in that data sheet. And so I think here, I wanted to just preview that we might want to add under the key issues a way to kind of identify a trend as one of the issues. And I haven't figured it out exactly how to put those words together, but I think it'll fit better than calling out a whole nother section that just has a bolded headline of trends. The economy section was really where I struggled with deciphering what's a trend and what's data and a key issue. So as you're going through this, if you have thoughts, I would appreciate them, and we can keep talking with Kathy about how to structure that. And so I'm kind of thumbing through to page 46. Matakees shows up here under economy, and it showed up under land use, and it's going to probably show up under housing. And so I think our task is to make sure that the description, the paragraph describing Matakees is tailored for each of those sections, but it is the type of project that does kind of run through all these different chapters. And kind of getting to the tail end of this, town services is where I was getting ahead of myself before. Town services is the section where we were making it more of an inventory of all the town services. And in looking at the LCPs that have been approved, it's really not. There's actually not a lot, none of them actually have kind of like this description of the fire department or police department and library, and it really just kind of jumps right in. And so, as the planning board reviews this, I think that's the pattern we want to follow, especially given the number of key issues that have been identified under these kind of subheadings. So general government, public safety, health services, libraries, senior age-friendly services, education and learning. So these are well-crafted issues that then, they correspond to the action items a little bit later. But what we're doing with this next section is where, like this, for example, my understanding is the vote happened. We will describe the proposition 2.5 for additional funding for fire department staff. And then the next item is the fire department strategic plan. So instead of inventorying the fire department and trying to describe it, we want to refer directly, we want people to see the fire department strategic plan, which has all that information. So the police department doesn't have that, but it does have some of the information. The recently completed facility condition assessment is going to be a really critical document that we're referring to here that outlines all the improvements necessary for all the town-owned buildings. And then the library strategic plan, the Dennis Yarmouth Regional School District is in the process of creating a strategic plan. So we want to, instead of cataloging it all at the beginning, we want to refer people to those plans, which, a tremendous amount of time and effort have been put into those. Recreation and entertainment, just going through that, golf is a work in progress. I think we want to flesh that out a little bit more. And I think here I'm going to stop for a moment, just before I shift into housing, and just find out if I lost everybody, or if I'm hit mute or on accident or something.
No, we're still here, Jeff.
Still here, Jim.
Okay.
Yeah,
Keep
thank
hanging
you.
in there. Keep it going.
Okay, great. So I will go back to screen share. I'm going to end up on page 53 for the housing section. So again, this is the first time you guys are going to see a draft, and even when Kathy was looking at it, I do think there's going to be things that you all will want to add and things that we want to massage through the way this chapter reads. But I did change it up a little bit from the first version. We're really trying to showcase the housing production plan, but we don't, and it was directions from the Cape Cod Commission. We don't want to just take everything from the housing production plan and publish it in the LCP. They don't want that. We don't want that, and the community probably doesn't want that either. So trying to position the housing production plan as this overarching document, it's really important. However, as some of you probably know, it doesn't really cover market rate housing. It doesn't really give the town direction on goals and actions for all the other types of housing issues that you have. So one of the things we do want to do is acknowledge that there is a fair amount of hard work that's been done at the Cape Cod Commission to look at housing across the region. And so this was one document that, as we're going through this, it's 2023, it's pretty recent, and it's the housing needs and analysis for the Cape. And this is where it helps really identify some of the really critical trends that we're seeing and the issues in terms of Yarmouth specifically. Obviously, we all know that it's not just Yarmouth, but it's becoming increasingly unaffordable for residents. So that's one of those sort of trends. Shortage of both rental and home ownership. The percentage of housing units that are designated as affordable is 5%. We're all trying to achieve the 10% goal. Expecting a decline in the number of year-round homes is a trend that Yarmouth is experiencing, but it's Cape-wide. So just that kind of the introductory, set the stage, in the media and everywhere else, it's a housing crisis. And if the planning board wants to further identify that, this would be a good time in your review is to capture whether we want to identify, the national trend and the Cape Cod trend of this being a housing crisis that we're facing. And then what I attempted to do was to kind of start to just pull out some of the key data points, so population and population trends, housing costs, and this is where we had a little bit of some questions about the data that we should be using, whether we should be using the 2021 and 20 data that's in the housing production plan, or kind of provide this 2025 update. But we want to keep referring to the 2024 housing production plan and the data that it has, because it's a deeper dive. That was the intensive document. That was the intensive research that was done. So we don't want to lose track of that. We're not able to update all the pieces of data that were gathered as part of the housing production plan. So there may be some discussion points here, talking about the housing stock, talking about the affordable housing inventory, and then kind of talking about the key issues that you as a group have identified related to housing when this crosses between market rate and affordable housing. And I'm not sure, Kathy, if this was actually the best time to do it, but at some point, a quick discussion of the seasonal community designation, it does seem relevant and important to identify, even though the town was not automatically included, because it's a topic of conversation, because there are strategies and potential opportunities for those communities to combat some of the impacts. Right now, it's really just a placeholder in here, but I'm trying to glean information where I can. You have your ongoing study on the short-term rentals with the UMass Donahue Institute. I didn't have access to a lot of information for this version, but I think making sure that we can incorporate that here would be valuable. The Housing Trust, trying to acknowledge the Affordable Homes Act, and especially the accessory dwelling unit work that you guys have worked on, the way the law changed, and then of course the housing production plan, and then I did repeat kind of the seasonal employee housing zoning bylaw here. So that's kind of a real crash course on the housing section.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Can I
Mr.
just
Smith.
ask a couple of questions? Kathy, when is that study on short-term rentals from the Donahue Institute going to expected to be completed?
They're trying to do their interviews now. I thought it was supposed to be completed by the fall.
By the fall. So that won't help this document, truly. Because I guess, Jeff, where I'm going with it is Provincetown's already done the exact same study a year and a half ago that we're doing now in Yarmouth.
Okay.
Is there any of that information that may glean from that study that would be helpful within this? Because housing, to me, is probably one of the number one crisis, along everything else that's going on, but having people have a place to live and affordability is huge in this town.
Yeah, I think we can either do that, or maybe, it's a conversation that maybe Kathy can help with this, but we won't be publishing, so we have it like August, and then this is the timeline that I'm gonna get to in a minute. As the planning board prepares for the public hearing on the LCP, let's say that's August 20th, a couple weeks before that, if there could be a way to get an update from that study, if they have any kind of early findings that they're seeing or important data points, we would probably want to take that last ditch effort to incorporate that in to the point that they're at, and then look at the action items and just make sure that we're referring to implementing the recommendations of the short-term rental project as it's completed. I just don't know if we should go to Provincetown to find that, or if we can kind of talk to the Donahue Institute about kind of if they have findings we can incorporate at this stage or whatever stage they're at.
I think one of the things that we're going to have, and we had the same problem with the open space and rec plan, it's like projects are still moving in the background as we're trying to solidify things, and we're not going to always catch up. I think we have an action item that basically says complete that study and basically implement, evaluate implementation of the recommendations made to minimize costs, blah, 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 blah. So there's an action item to that.
Yes.
And then we're talking about, we're doing the study. How much detail you're able to include will be a function, as Jeff said, how far along we are and when can we incorporate it. But at some point, it needs to be pencils down, and this is the information that we have. I wouldn't go to P-Town for it. I think we're doing our own individual study. Let's just see what comes out of it.
Okay.
But we've mentioned it so people are aware of it, and we have an action item related to implementation.
Okay.
Would this not
Great.
be, would this not be the location of some of what has happened lately on Route 28? We talked about this before, the number of units we've created, the number of hotels that have been converted into housing units. I mean, I've tried to scan this quickly. I don't know if it's here somewhere, but I mean, that's the most recent data we have.
Number of units that have been converted to housing on Route 28.
Right. I mean, we have 2 motels that are 100% workforce housing. Possibly another hotel is going to be 35% workforce housing. I mean, this is all relevant data. I mean, so much has happened in the last 5 years. Looking at 2021 data is not helpful. So, and to reference it more than we have to in place of that type of data that we have now.
I think the housing production plan highlighted a problem, but now we need to take it and say, in 2024 at least, because we have the full statistical information for 2024, this is what it costs median, and then this is what you would need to make. Because when I read this, you need to make $109,000 family household income. I'm like, that's not true. You'd need to make a lot more money to buy a house today. So we do need to, and I don't think that's an extensive amount of updating, but I do think we need to reference more current data on median income and household, the costs of median household, median home costs, and then what you would need to earn as a household in order to be able to purchase that. I think that information is relatively easy to find and put in there. And probably Deirdre can probably get it in 2.2 nanoseconds.
I definitely, anything that's census data, I can get it in.
Yeah.
I'll look for whatever needs updating.
Yeah, Deirdre's our statistical analysis expert.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's a good discussion. It's a good time to have it. I think,
Yeah.
Peter, I did have a note that I think it came from you, and it was carried in my notes about putting an update of like the number of units created, especially along Route 28.
Oh, we did, okay.
I do agree it's where it belongs, and I want to include it. We're going back and forth we're kind of like in the throes of that inventory on Route 28 right now. So I can make a note for the next version that we should come up with some kind of way to summarize the number of units, especially the units that were not the units that were not mentioned in the housing production plan that maybe came after that, and to capture the number of units that have been produced, or at least a summary version of that. So I did have that in my notes. I think that came through your comments on the first version.
And I know I've seen the number of units maybe at one of the housing committee meetings that I've been at, so I know we can probably find that pretty easily.
Housing Assistance Corp. has got all that, and just a phone call to
It's all
Hack
there.
will probably be able to give you it in about 2 minutes.
Yep.
Jeff, in relation to what Peter was talking about, in this category, we have had, in the last couple of years, some significant requests from hotel owners. So it's not an action by the town, it's an action by our business owners to help themselves with seasonal workforce housing. And they've come before the ZBA, and we've said yes. I don't think there's an instance where we've said no. But these are actions that were allowed, the commercial partners we have came forward and asked, they're trying to help solve this problem too. I guess that's my point. And there have been recent actions, Peter had mentioned at least two that we know that are 100%, and a recent one that's, I think, coming up tomorrow or was last week for another 35%. So these are actions that motel owners are taking to help the seasonal workforce. And I think there must be, I'd like to find a way to get them in this category of recent actions, however we want to categorize them, as, the town then approved them. But the actual impetus for it came from the commercial sector.
Yeah, I think if I could get a little help getting those and just kind of being able to lodge them in like the ZBA decisions, I think that's the way to.
It would just be a simple paragraph of, recent ZBA decisions, blah, blah, blah.
Yep, exactly. And I think that is the town action. I think is like, in whether it was 2025 or 2024, the zoning board of appeals approved, 2 or 3 special permits to increase the number of seasons. I think that's the way we can do it in a section. I think that's important. So I appreciate that. That's the kind of stuff I think as you guys are going through this, I think those are the types of comments that this is a great time to be able to capture some of that stuff and add it in. Great. I feel like I'm talking a lot, but I'm going to keep going. We're going to go to capital infrastructure.
It's usually my job,
facilities.
Jeff.
Okay. I like listening to you better, Kathy, than me. So again, this is the first draft. It's similar to the housing section where I'm sure you as planning board members and residents can help massage this a little bit. But I think what I tried to do is take a shot at an introduction using the FY26 budget. The town has a tremendous amount of information available online. It's very transparent. It should be applauded no matter what. But to kind of distill it enough for a layperson who's going to the LCP, I really was trying to capture the essence of a municipal budget, and I think people do that for a job. So I do see the opportunity for some infographics here. The SIP in the budget actually has a couple really nice pie charts that break down the overall municipal expenditures by topic. It's just going to take time whether we want to incorporate the exact graphics that the town has or kind of see if we can gusset them up a little bit. But I think this is an opportunity to educate people briefly about the municipal budget, not just the capital plan, but just the budget in general. It's one of the only places where we would actually talk about how all this stuff gets funded over time, which is the budget. So it's a work in progress. But I'm trying to identify what the town has available in terms of like capital program and capital budget, and kind of give the summary. I do think that there is like this trend, like a theme, in the FY26 budget. The 4 bullets that are highlighted here is a rolling stock plan, reducing the use of free cash, completing, which sounds like it's been done, at least the first level of this facilities plan, the facilities assessment, and then kind of this guidance document. These are the themes that are, identified right now in terms of the capital planning efforts. And I just wanted to kind of carry that through. We can provide links to the budget planning committee's webpage, which has just an overwhelming amount of information available. It's all there. And then kind of the key issues, which have been pulled through the previous discussions, and then really kind of taking this first walk through recent actions. And so really kind of top of mind, it sounds like it just was provided and finished, is this first the first phase of the facility condition assessment. I think in the summary, it says that there may be more. There may be more detailed assessments for individual buildings to really identify the additional steps and costs. But this seems like a very critical document for the town to have available for the capital improvement plan moving forward. So definitely highlighting that. The school district, their 5 and 10-year capital improvement plan, a little bit elusive, a little bit difficult to find that document. I'm pretty sure as we get towards the middle and end of this, we should be able to probably refer someone to where that stuff exists, but I know it's been discussed. And then the guidance document, which again, I think it is important in this section because it identifies the bullets on this page. I'm on page 61. Really identifies some of the purpose and intent of having this capital improvement process and have it transparent and have the departments chipping in and have it really forward thinking, and it's these bullets here that describe it. And then where we left off was the description of how the identified capital improvement projects align and support the projects that you're identifying in the LCP. And so that's where we are at right now. And it was today, to be honest, requesting some information from Kathy and the assistant town administrator to get access to those spreadsheets. There's one that's projects by category, which I think will allow us to kind of sort of sift through. It's a very long list of projects, but for example, like the rolling stock has an itemized list of every vehicle. And what I think we're going to try to do is just condense that to identify rolling stock as the capital improvement, item, and then talk about, where it relates to the LCP. So is this greening the fleet? Is this making, providing more electric vehicles, and kind of going through the building facilities assessment and aligning it with the LCP? We haven't done that yet. So that's going to be the next phase. And as we talk about the timeline, this is our immediate next step. As you guys are going through the document for things we missed, we're going to be coming up with the second draft of this capital facilities chapter pretty much in short order. It's our top priority. Moving ahead. So then, kind of the last piece of what I'm going to talk about tonight is the targeted action plan. And so I do envision a cover page, something for the reader to know we're shifting gears here. We're in the targeted action plan. I did kind of pull in some introductory language. This can certainly change, but it's really, the way that the Cape Cod Commission is expecting the targeted action plan to come forward. And so that's this placeholder language here. And then what we do with the targeted action plan is we take the topic, the system, the natural systems, and we have water resources and we have wastewater management. And so where this gets to be very useful is we can pretty much see the goal for wastewater, of which you've already identified, is continue with the implementation of the Yarmouth wastewater program, and then the action items. And so this is it. Right now it's currently 6 action items, and this is from that document that Kathy's been very helpful kind of walking around, and a lot of people have seen it. And in almost like one page, you can see the targeted action plan for wastewater. And it's really kind of distilling the work that's been done. So now we're shifting to water supply. And so the goal, shakes out as attain a sustainable supply of high quality drinking water to meet our community needs. And this was once one goal, and we've pulled it out, teased it out into 3. And then the action. So this has a lot to do with PFAS. The second action item, which we've talked about already, is really determining the future drinking water supply demands. So you have that 2019 plan, and there are some questions and effort to be done to make sure that it can be suitable for new growth moving forward. So I won't do this with all of them, but basically here's fresh water and saltwater systems and the action items associated. So we're down to a page and a half, and once we get into formatting, we're gonna make this look nicer for people to kind of see how the actions are laying out. But right now, this whole section, with the work of Kathy and others, this is pulled through from that working document, the key issues document that's been sent around. except it's kind of set up so that as we move through this, the targeted action plan, I'm going to jump to the built system. So here at page 72. So the goal is identified for community design and land use, and then the actions are here. And then what we can do is under transportation and connectivity, we have the goal and action items here. And so this really starts to take shape as the targeted action plans that you would see. We were looking at the town of Sandwich, in the town of Brewster's, LCP, and this is going to get us that targeted action plan that's easier for people to go to the topic that they're interested in seeing and see the targeted action plan. And so I think I'm going to end here with a note on, yes, I'm going to end here. Just with a note on the targeted action plan. You have seen those actions a few times. So as you want to change the verbiage and wordsmithing, just be cognizant that you've done that twice already. It will need work, and I'll take suggestions, and Kathy and I can kind of work through it, but the board and others have kind of worked through that, and I just kind of pulled those text items through. So I could take questions, or I could kind of quickly show the schedule, which Kathy and I were talking about. We took the tail end of our overarching schedule and kind of made it more zoomed in. We have more touch points to talk about with the board. It's going to be busy over the next couple of months. So I don't know.
Jeff, I
Kathy
think
or
I'd like to
Joanna,
just do questions, and then we can jump to the timetable.
Okay.
Any questions, comments? I have a couple, and I think they're at the 10,000-foot flyover. And I mentioned this to Kathy earlier. The language here, I think, overall, we just need to be careful about who the author is. Is this going to be a first-person or third-person report? In some places, we use the words "we" and "our," and in other places, it's the facts, ma'am. So I just want to be consistent. I'm not sure where the board would like to go. I think the kind of "our," "we" thing is I'm comfortable with. It's something that I think commonly we use in our documents when we speak about planning board actions. But I noticed that kind of overall because I know you're pulling from various documents, Jeff, and I appreciate that. But I think at some final look, we need to identify the voice. I would look for any comments from the board on that. The other thing, generally, again, 10,000 feet, footnotes. Are we going to have footnotes or not? In some places there are. Personally, I don't think we want to have footnotes. I defer to the town planner, of course. But those are, some of the smaller items. But I think as we go through it, we just need to think about it. And the other thing, generally, on the definition, the introductory definition of the systems. The three systems. In two cases, we do refer to the Cape Cod Commission, but the first one on natural, we didn't. So I'd just like to, again, if we're going to indoctrinate some Cape Cod Commission language here as to why these things are called systems to begin with, we didn't choose that. That's a format that's been given to us. I'd just like to have that kind of consistency throughout. Otherwise, I think it's a draft that's moving along really well, and I know a lot of work has been put into it. And our job now is for us to go through this very carefully and get our comments to Kathy and to you, Jeff. But I want to thank you for the very quick turnaround on all this. This is an awful lot to start to put together. So thank you for that. And any other comments from the board?
Madam Chair, if I may. I agree with your comments with regards to consistency. Sometimes when I'm reading different chapters, I feel like different people have written different
They have.
parts of this.
Yeah.
some of it is very flowery, if you will. You know, we have beautiful green flowing lawns on our golf course. Come on. I don't want you to go back and rewrite the whole thing. But I think trying to make it feel like it's been written by 10 people or one person is something we need to decide. And do we really need all these flowery adjectives throughout this thing, you know, that...
Well, go through it and mark them up.
So those are the types of, but again, the whole idea that I would like that the whole thing read as though it was written by one and not a committee, and clearly it has been written by a committee, but how we try to structure some of that. This is more talking to Jeff, if there's something you can just think about when he's putting this, the we's and I's and they's, and how this all kind of flows as one, not like 5 books. That's all.
Yep.
I'll get my rest of my stuff like.
Anyone else? Okay, when is I just want to review we'll go through the timetable, so why don't we do the timetable?
Yeah, and just one quick question. If the board has any opposition to the we and our approach, I appreciate that, Joanne. I think if we can get some clarity on that, if the board is okay with going with we and our, we can kind of make that consistent. It is a great time to do that, and I would like to do that before we send the draft to the Cape Cod Commission. So I guess, does anyone have an objection to that approach? Because that will allow us to make sure that kind of tense is in there.
I just think pick it one way or the other and be it consistent throughout. If we use we and our, that's fine with me. I don't care what you do, but I think it just needs to be consistent throughout the document.
Community document, so I think we and our.
Yeah.
I have a tendency to write that way because it's our town. It's
Yeah.
not my town. It's
Yeah.
not.
Madam Chair, is that consistent? I can't remember with what Sandwich and Brewster just did, because they've gotten theirs passed recently. Jeff, do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay,
How
I'm
they approach
assuming
that, but
assuming that it is. That also makes sense in terms of just doing the dance with the Cape Cod Commission. Not to mention the fact that it's more appropriate to begin with.
Yeah.
Yep. And just one, to respond to Jim, I think it's important, and we did try to take out the flowery, we just tried to stick to the facts, so if the golf one is the holdover, that was a work in progress. Please flag anything that you feel like still has that sense. We did try hard, I tried hard to make sure that we were reducing that. I will say, a little bit is identified in other plans. Some of the towns have.
It's in the open
gone
space
to-
north plan.
Yeah, and the other LCPs that we were looking at, some of them have not skipped that flowery approach, but I did try to really minimize it. But if you see a section, please flag it, because I think it's important to kind of take as much of that out as is feasible.
I saw very few. I think the biggest thing I've ever seen in this that I have an issue with is under salt water, and I'll get this to them, is ponds and cranberry bogs are not salt water. So we just need to relocate those on page 18. But that's the biggest thing that I saw in this entire report, so I think you're doing okay.
Yep, thank you.
So are we okay with the we and our?
I am.
A big nod?
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
great. One other question, and this is, I'll direct it to Mr. Smith, with regard to the capital plan, Ken. The presentation to the select board
Yes.
must have had a PowerPoint presentation that summarized and had, Jeff, have you had access to that?
It's all on the webpage.
It's
I
all,
looked at a couple, I mean.
Okay.
it is,
I'm not-
as Madam Chair pointed out, I am on the Capital Budget Committee, and that PowerPoint is on the CIP website.
Okay.
And as a summary document, those presentations to the board typically can do some of the summaries that it sounds like you're trying to do. And they're usually pretty detailed, if I recall.
It is probably a 10,000-foot view mostly on the summary, but there is some detail that it gets into, because, it was a presentation to the select board, but also a living, working document, too, that we're going to keep modifying. But I really think from the standpoint of the capital budget, Jeff, your team really has hit on, what we're trying to get done. It really is laying out a budget for the future that makes sense, and that's really what it's all about.
And the web version of that if I recall, Ken, you can click on an individual project, and then you get all the detail you want for each individual project on the
Yeah,
web
yeah,
version, so that's why it's so nice as a starting point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It would end up being too much information
boy, no,
for
no.
this document, but
It'd be as big as the whole, it'd be as big as the whole LCP.
the whole CIP document's about 50 pages in itself, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I got stuck into the rabbit hole the other day. It is a tremendous amount of information, and it's all there, and it's very easy to find a lot of information. And I think just finding the right amount to distill and pull through. It was really kind of today that I kind of saw the grouping by project. I sort of saw that I think that's the key for what we want to put forward into the LCP, is not necessarily going through the 39 types of vehicles that may come forward in the next 10 years, but it's just the idea of rolling stock and the idea of infrastructure, and just finding a way to show the topical area and the dollar amount that's going to be invested over the next 10 years, and then compare it to the LCP kind of action items. And so pretty soon we'll be providing another draft of that. And Ken, I appreciate that you're on that committee. Maybe you're the first person we can talk to about that.
Sure. be happy to. But, Madam Chair, just one more,
Yes.
since now that we've gone down this rabbit hole for 1 second, just to add to it, on the, I flipped to page 60, on the DY School District, there is a CIP plan that the school district has developed, a 5 and 10-year plan. So you had talked, right above the link for facility conditions. Well, there is a linkable plan that the school has put together, so just something that, I know you had said you're having trouble getting it. I know it exists because I've seen it, so
Okay.
somebody from the school should be able to provide that, and I'm surprised it's not online.
And it may be. I don't want to discredit if they have it online and I couldn't find it, but I'll look again, and if I have trouble, we'll kind of reach out and figure something out.
Sure.
I appreciate that. So as you're reviewing anything like that will be very helpful to make comments on. Okay, and so talked about the schedule quite a bit already, but now you should be seeing just a Word doc table. At the top is May 21st, that's tonight. I am really trying to acknowledge that we have draft 2 of the existing conditions, but really it's draft 1 of the housing and capital facilities. We're hoping that it's reasonable to ask for comments by May 30th. And on the far right, I tried to denote where the planning board might have a meeting, and that's for your purpose, but also for our purpose, to kind of understand how many meetings we can potentially attend or not attend, and kind of get through all this. This is really draft. Kathy and I were putting this together today, so it's subject to change and it's subject to your input. But I just wanted to kind of give you the overall sense. June 4th, we're slated to attend your meeting to talk about the mixed-use analysis, and I think we'll be there with Union Studios. And that's kind of the sub-project, but it does connect to the LCP. And then I mentioned this to Kathy. I think this is probably the hardest deadline in the timeline. This is going to be the hardest deadline for BSC to meet. But after kind of back engineering some of these dates, I've kind of identified June 11th as a target for kind of us, the royal we, to have a draft of the LCP that everyone's comfortable sending to the Cape Cod Commission for an initial review. And Kathy can add to this, but when we met with them, they welcomed it. They invited a draft to see where the town's at. They did offer to see sections. But I think in this case where we are at is we're pretty close to being able to provide them with a draft, maybe without the executive summary, no graphics, but to give them a draft. And the asterisk here is at the bottom of the table. They said a full document, which this is long. It's going to be the first time that they're seeing it all. Could require 3 to 4 weeks for their staff to go through it and provide comments and edits or suggestions. Right now, we're being a little optimistic, and we're kind of looking at 3 weeks to get feedback from the commission. So that might be something to discuss. But I did want to just mention that. So if we could get something to them on June 11th, it allows us to let at least 3 weeks go by, and then we would be talking about July 9th. I know I'm skipping one date, but it would be July 9th would be potentially a supplemental meeting for the board to review kind of the draft and any comments from the Cape Cod Commission. And the goal would be to try to be releasing a draft of the LCP for public comment on or about July 14th. And I think what we talked about was trying to get a draft out there for 3 to 4 weeks. And I think right now this is timed out at 4 weeks where the draft would be available. The note on the right, which we can talk about, but we can talk about it later as well, but town website, email, other outreach, that robocall, ways to get that word out that that draft's available. And then kind of concurrent to this, I think the program would be to release the draft for the public, and then try to arrive at a select board meeting around that time. And I think, Kathy, I think you penciled this in, right? So maybe July 22nd. So the draft will be out to the public. There could be a conversation with the select board for them to see the draft, make sure that they know it's out for public comment, and help them spread the word that it's out and available for commenting. And then the way that the planning board schedule is, I'm trying to, I was trying to be sensitive to keeping to your normal schedule, but Kathy mentioned that some of these would be supplemental meetings, but August 6th would be a regular meeting of the planning board. And while we might still have the report out for public comment, it was a regularly scheduled board meeting that we felt like we could come and we could at least look at any comments that we're receiving, understand the nature and size and scale and scope of the comments that are coming from the public. And just because it was a regularly scheduled meeting, we could have that conversation on the 6th, and then kind of closing the public comment on or about August 11th. And the reason why this timeline starts to get pretty tight is because we talked about having a planning board public hearing, which was required on August 20th. And so by this timeline, if we close comments on the 11th, we're not anticipating a total rewrite. We're anticipating comments, suggestions, and some edits that we think we could probably incorporate in a couple days. And then the planning board would have that full version for August 20th, the version that is out for the public hearing. And then just some town meeting notes. This is helpful from Kathy. I think this is still subject to some discussion, possibly some date changes by the select board, but this is based on last year. These are tentative, but there would be the draft warrant language would be on or about August 26th. And so my understanding is that the warrant language would be for town meeting to review and adopt the local comprehensive plan, but I don't know that we need to have the entire comprehensive plan in the warrant.
No.
So then we would be kind of targeting September 17th, thereabouts, for a final draft of the LCP to be in with the planning board a couple days ahead. You all have seen it throughout the summer, but presumably there would be some kind of vote for the planning board to send that to town meeting. This is just this is my understanding of how it could work. I'm sure it's subject to some variability here. But then September 23rd, if we were kind of running this tentative timeline, would be the final draft warrant. The draft warrant gets executed in early October. And then I had kind of penciled in November 4th. The two asterisks there are a suggestion from Kathy is maybe pushing out the special town meeting, the special fall town meeting to a little bit later in November. And I don't know how that works and whether that's an option, but essentially town meeting is the last step. So town meeting, there'd be a presentation and a vote for the community to adopt the the local comprehensive plan. And literally probably the next day, we would be poised to send it to the Cape Cod Commission with the information that town meeting has adopted it. And we just kind of are holding December as a timeline for the Cape Cod Commission to hold their public hearing and to hopefully vote to certify it. So really kind of a condensed timeline from here on out. And I just figured Kathy and I kind of talked about presenting this to the planning board for discussion tonight. So I think that's that for now. Unless there's comments or questions.
I think the only comment I would have is we had the special fall town meeting on the 19th of November last year. Why can't we have it on the 18th of November this year? Those 2 extra weeks or 3 extra weeks, because lots of times we would have it in the last Tuesday in October, all that extra time. So maybe one of the things I was saying is if it's a consensus of the board to send a letter to the select board from the planning board asking them to, have a special town meeting on November 18th, it will allow you additional time with the blah, 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 blah. And then don't forget, we have some zoning that we need to be addressing at the same time. That would be my only comment.
Yeah. Any comments on that? Kathy would like to go forward with that as soon as she can. So I think we have consensus, Kathy, that extra 2 weeks would be good for us and for Jeff
So I'll just
and
work
for the
up-
plan.
I'll just work up a little memo to the planning board, or to the select board from the planning board. I'll run it by you, and then
Okay.
I'll submit that.
Sounds good. Just a quick question on the June 11th submission. Is that a hard and fast date for them? Is that required, or is that something we picked?
That's something I think we picked by backing into it, by trying to have the full draft released on the July 14th.
And it's 3 to 4 weeks for them to,
I think they said they'd like at least 2, but prefer 3 if it's a full draft. Because they have to send it to a bunch of different people within their
Each
groups, and then
section gets
summer
reviewed
times, and people might be on
Yeah, I
vacation.
guess I
and-
didn't
Certain
realize
sections
that.
get reviewed by different departments of
Oh,
the
I see.
commission, Madam Chair.
Okay, I didn't realize that, okay. And will that have pictures, graphs?
It sounds like it won't. My suggestion might be if we know we want to insert something, it might be good to say, insert graphic of, or just so that they know what type
The
of
placeholder?
graphics we would be including to make sure that we hit everything that they might want to see, even if it's not directly in there at the moment.
Okay. Okay,
Correct, and can I just add 2 things? I mean, maybe we can circle back, and whether if it's a chart or a graph that is portraying data, maybe we want to focus on getting that in. But it wouldn't be like photos and, half-page spreads, and it would not be that level of formatting at that stage. But maybe if there's important data that we want to try to make sure is in there, that could be an effort that we could try to get as much data into that version, but it won't be like formatted so that it looks real nice and fancy. And then just my other point was the goal of pushing that up, the June 11th, would be to give the Cape Cod Commission the time to review it, because I think it's going to put the town, it's going to put the plan in the best position to have that commission review before we release it to the public, just in case the Cape Cod Commission, and they might come back with important suggestions or changes that we need to incorporate, and we would have the slightest amount of time, but we would have time to make that incorporated change in the version that gets sent out to the public. And then just the last part of this is we're trying to put it out for 4 weeks. If there's some kind of detrimental crunch of time, like maybe 3 weeks out for public comment, would be one way to make up that difference. And I don't know, like if 3 weeks is enough. The difference between 3 weeks and 4 weeks, I don't know. I put in 4 weeks because I think that's what the select board had talked about. But
30 days is a standard for the select board. I think they would be upset if it's less than 30.
okay, great.
Okay. I don't have anything else unless there's other questions.
Any other questions for Jeff before? Go, Kathy?
Ask John. So you're going to be coming back on June 4th for your analysis on the Route 28. Are we going to coordinate maybe next week on that, or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we should. We had targeted the 30th as the date for the deliverable.
Right.
So that we will need that time, but I think that's going to be our target, is to get the deliverable to you by the 30th. But if we could talk offline and just have an opportunity to talk midweek, maybe next week.
I think that would be good, just to get
yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how much work you've done, where you stand. It might be good to have a quick review before the final deliverable on Friday.
Yes, absolutely. That's always helpful.
All right, sounds good.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Great.
Thank you,
Yep,
Jeff.
thank you
Thanks,
all.
Jeff.
Appreciate it a lot.
Did you want me to give a quick update on the mixed use?
Sure.
I mean, obviously, we just did the Jeff part, but we're going to be having a meeting, staff's going to have a meeting with Union Studios next Tuesday where they're going to be presenting some of their ideas for their renderings in preparation for the June 4th meeting. So that is something that's moving forward, and we are working towards putting together some type of panel discussion group with some questions, so that sometime in June, we can have that meeting with, hopefully it will be, we've sent out inquiries to Paul Nitzwicki at the Regional Cape Chamber, as well as Mary Vilbon at the local chamber. Jay Grandy, who's been working with us, also has a good suggestion of like maybe reaching out, and I think you guys mentioned it too, reaching out to some of the developers who did like Harwich Port or Dennisport, and finding out who they are and seeing if maybe they can comment. If they can't comment, maybe quizzing them on and doing like an interview on the phone and asking them some of the questions on how they made those particular projects work for them. So we are working on that financial aspect, with the 25th being the final report and public presentation.
Anything else on the plan, Kathy? I think we covered, we got all 4 of them, okay. Next item on our agenda this evening is Mattakees update.
I got stuff. I think all of the information, including down all the land use teams, down to the one, my understanding should be on the website by no later than Friday. So that's going to be all the giant information. The MUC is giving a presentation to the Select Board on June 3rd, where they're going to basically give a status of, the project to date, the results from the different land use teams, and then also talk about the public engagement. I don't think that the MUC has really had any chance to fully digest any of that or come up with any particular thoughts on it, but they're going to be presenting to the Select Board where everybody stands and all the great work that all the land use teams did. There's a lot of really good ideas. They kind of went back and forth, and it's great information. But we're also at the same time working on a survey that's being done that go out to the general public, so kind of vetting some of these ideas that came out of these, and also allowing opportunities for other options, if you had another option that you might want to suggest, just to make sure that we're touching all the bases and we're not just, oh, we've thought of this and we're not even going to think about that. A lot of them, I think, we'll probably find that they have been thought about and they were dismissed for a particular reason, and we can identify that. And then also kind of having that general workshop where we'd be presenting these ideas, like the individual ideas in one particular place would be on July 15th. It would be a type of workshop. Hopefully that will be here in the hearing room. We're not exactly sure the format of that and how far along we're going to be, but maybe having some general conceptual ideas of what we're looking at. So lots of things are going on in the MUC. They're going to be very busy this summer, just digesting a lot of that information and then seeing how it might lay out on the plans.
Madam Chair, may I ask a follow-up question? Mr. Scott has tendered his resignation, and I was wondering who is now running point and how long, are there any changes that you anticipate in the process?
I don't know.
Good answer. Okay. Okay. We'll see.
Okay. Any MUC updates that anyone else might have that they've learned on their own or at committee meetings? Okay, great. So the next item is some minutes. Kathy, thank you for pulling together all the prior meeting minutes. So may I have a motion to accept the minutes of April 16th, 2025?
So moved.
You?
It was me.
Second?
Here's right.
Second?
Here's got it.
All in favor?
Abstain.
May I have a motion to accept the minutes of April 30th?
So moved.
60,
Second.
30th? Sorry.
April 30th?
I'm sorry, who?
Moved by me.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to accept the minutes of May 7th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any committee updates?
I have one that's sort of related. It has to do with yes, I have a small update on the sewer project. North Main Street and Station Avenue work. 28 will be open, but there's no turns onto North Main Street, as some of us know. So you're supposed to use Pond Street to Wood Street to North Main, but businesses are still open.
I just want to give you a quick update.
Please.
Since I live there.
Yes, ma'am.
North Main Street is open.
Okay, well,
It's paved.
Yeah, they paved
It's
it
done.
wonderful, because that's the
They paved it
update.
today.
today.
Well, okay, well, that's
They paved it
the email I got was yesterday, so maybe they were just being overly.
Well, I was wondering why
So
there were
is
so
that
many
all not
cars
true
on
now?
Pond Street.
Or
The
what?
other-
Yeah, is that a?
Can I retract my update? Okay.
You can.
There's no update.
No, I do have some update. There's 2 other areas. No, wait, there's other parts of our town that are experiencing construction, Madam Chair. I'm not sure if you've noticed. In terms of the Route 28 water service work, 1 lane where possible, or detours. But no, good news, no work on Friday, and I'm assuming no work on Monday. That means 4 days of freedom. The same thing at 28 at Frank Baker, no work on Friday, so get excited, or Monday. And allegedly, and I don't know this, but I believe it to be true, the South Shore Drive, the Parkers River Beach parking lot is now open, 24/7.
Until the piping plover get there.
Well, okay, Jim. And then something related to that, Madam Chair, just as a quick follow-up, I'm not sure if you or Kathy watched the Select Board meeting. There was an executive session to discuss the pump station, and I didn't forget to finish watching the Select Board meeting. Did we get some smoke to come out of the top of Town Hall? And what color was it? And did they say anything about the location of the pump station and whether it's been negotiated? All right, well, I guess I'll have to find out at my next RAC meeting, Madam Chair. But it was on the agenda. I don't know if anybody noticed. It was very exciting. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Will. Anyone else?
And I'm very happy for you on a personal level. Sorry.
Housing, the community housing gave approval for the first stage of the 1121 Route 28 Habitat for Humanity development.
Nice.
Across the street.
Right.
Cool.
I brought a little plan because I thought you'd probably want to see it.
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
So it's, I didn't bring all the house, is that enough? I think.
It's okay, we'll share.
Yeah,
can
that's
share.
okay.
You have one and we'll share.
Hasn't changed, has it?
There you
She probably has two. You got one of these?
go. Guys. That's cool.
Thank you.
And
Figure you had one of these.
there are two, I think, two one-bedroom, two two-bedroom, and two three-bedroom.
You gotta turn it like
And
this.
that one
I look at it wrong.
house
It
that
says 28.
faces onto Route 28 is being specially designed so that the back of the house will look pretty on Route 28. And,
I thought this was gonna be 9 units.
No, 6.
no, it's 6.
Is that a sign out, it's probably because of the sign out front?
What it was when it was a VCOD project, it was 9 condos and 3 triplexes.
Okay, that's why I'm getting the
So
9.
that's where you're getting the 9.
Interesting.
And it's,
Yep.
yeah,
Okay,
and they're very cute and,
cool.
They're nice.
so I guess that has to go through a lot more approvals and whatever. And the other interesting point was that the Housing Authority did not get any bids on the May 7th deadline for the Forest Road property.
Intriguing. What does that mean for the process, Deirdre?
I don't know.
Okay, neither do I.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Intriguing.
Nobody's bid.
Could the town have bid on it?
Right.
That means nobody wants to go through
right,
that
the
grief
town-
and
I guess the
aggravation.
town could.
There's only about 100 things that could go there.
Okay.
Thank you for that. I did not know that.
Madam Chair, I would like to tell you that I would have an update that everybody in town is listening to the fact that they could get a plank at the boardwalk, but based upon the results of town meeting, town elections yesterday, I don't think anybody in town is even awake or paying attention. And I hope they were, but unfortunately, less than 8% of the people in town bothered to actually show up and vote, and Act Blue wins. But anyway, in the meantime, you can still get a plank, $350 for an individual, $450 for a nonprofit, and $550 for a business. That's the only thing I have for my committee updates, but I do have a board member update, a comment. Based upon our meeting last week, where we spoke with regards to the lobster issue, and a gentleman from the Justice Institute, Ari, I forgot his last name, has forwarded to myself and to Kathy some information with regards to some potential bylaw amendments that I'm sure she'll share with the committee sometime when we get to that level.
When's on the agenda
I think
next?
it's July, I think, and so if you're watching, Ari, we're going to work on it, but it's going to take us a little while to get to that. But he did send us some information that's been requested, and Kathy, when we get to that point,
I did
we'll
get-
share that with the board.
I did get in writing the comments from Attorney Polini. He did provide those in writing.
Madam Chair, I have one board member item.
Yes?
I unfortunately saw the notification today that the town is looking for a new library director, and I would like to thank Jane Kane for all of her years of service. And also, when I scrolled through the employment listings of the town of Yarmouth, my goodness, Madam Chair, we are looking for some wonderful people to serve the town at all levels, and including the assistant town administrator, the health department director, the Department of Community Development, and some very fine people at, let's just say, less salaried positions than that. So I do hope there are some fine people out there that would like to work for the town. Not to mention, of course, passing of the vote for hiring 4 new firefighters, which hopefully won't be that difficult. But I do want to thank Jane as somebody that was able to serve on the Library Planning Committee for a couple of years. And now that the town is moving towards a new centralized library, Madam Chair, I am very excited for her and thank her for her hard work.
Okay. I have one board item, and maybe I just haven't logged onto the town website in a while, but there's a YouTube video regarding zoning.
Yes.
Was it a YouTube video?
I got a notification about it today.
Yeah, so I saw it
Did you
today.
watch it? What is
Yeah.
it like?
It's,
Who gave it?
And was Kathy on it?
yeah,
Was
it's
Kathy
Who
in
gave
it?
it, though, the video?
You did, you
just
didn't
the
even
town of
know it.
Yarmouth zoning. And it's cartoon-like.
Oh, I didn't see it.
okay.
I didn't see
It's
it.
cartoon-like. I thought it could be a little bit more sophisticated, but it wasn't specifically about home occupations. And here we go. Why zoning matters.
Oh, my goodness.
Madam Chair, do you believe that's in reference to all the press the town is getting recently?
I believe it is.
Herald article last Thursday, I think it was, did not show the town in a great light. It did say the planning board is doing their job well, but it did, over the Mr. Tolley situation, so.
I didn't see the Herald. So they reported on our meeting last week?
They did. They followed up on our meeting.
Yeah, because they had covered it before, I know.
believe it was
The zoning board of
Thursday.
When it was
appeals.
at the ZBA?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we came out okay?
We came out
Quoted
okay.
Will a few times.
What?
Yeah, you were quoted.
Lovely.
Yes.
Well, I said everything I said.
It was good stuff.
Oh, okay, all right.
No, you reiterated,
That's to the Boston Herald because I don't pay them, so I
It's
can't.
online.
actually, what they reported, I think, was important. It was reiterated to the audience.
Yeah.
That we are willing to work with them, but it's going to take time.
Oh, okay.
That is exactly what it said, Will.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah, I mean,
That's good.
we want.
That's good.
There's, yeah. the
You can't get
timetables
it
are
up
tricky
yet?
For the
I
season.
wouldn't play, so.
Okay.
All right.
And
no sound
it's
on
up.
Kathy,
It's
were you
all
there?
of a minute long, and it's, well, you can see, you can
Do
see.
you know
it.
about the video, Kathy?
No. I knew that they were working on some language. I thought it was just like a document. I didn't know it was.
No,
I'm sure
it's-
our fine new
it's-
communications director made something wonderful. Just
It's very simplified and cartoon-like.
I thought it was going to be lots of information, but I guess not.
It's very minimal.
Just can't get it to make noise.
it's all right.
Probably no volume. You just got to read fast.
So, yeah, we can just let it run, I guess.
Did it have any noise? It's, like,
It had, yeah, they would be reading
Oh,
pretty much.
problems happen.
When problems happen, go to your mailbox. Oh, dear Lord. Write your comment.
First step, see Kathy.
So on the right
gonna
is
say,
the
Kathy-
petitioner, and on the left, I mean, on the right is the building commissioner, and on the left is the petitioner.
Oh, my God. Sorry.
All white men. All women.
Chair? Oh,
They're
are
all
the
women.
complainants?
All the petitions, all the complainants are women.
That's not, person's not white.
Home occupations.
Wow.
what's
Oh, you mean these are
allowed,
the types of okay, I got it.
what's allowed, what's not,
Printing press? What is that?
Just make bread. Making bread.
parking.
Okay.
So this is about, you can't have people coming and going,
Can't have
you can't have toxic,
landscaping
chemicals.
I have so much to say about this, Madam Chair, but perhaps not in a public meeting.
Please not.
Then
Will.
it's City Hall. It's not Town Hall. And
We
I
are
just
not a
got
city.
myself in
Is
trouble.
the telephone number, yeah?
That leads you to believe that perhaps this was something that was produced elsewhere, and perhaps perhaps we slapped the town's name on it.
Interesting that it implied that only women have home occupations.
Worse. I don't
Thank you,
work.
Jim. Yeah. Anyway, it was about us, so I thought it was appropriate to bring it up. I would have liked that our town
Yeah.
planner might have had a fingerprint on it, but apparently
No,
not.
I did read an outline of like how might you go. I just thought it was going to be a document that was going to be like, learn more about it. I didn't know it was going to be a video, that's all.
Okay.
So I knew.
Madam Chair, may I make a
Something.
recommendation? We invite the town communication director to sit
Exactly.
and have a chat with us some point.
I think that's a good idea. We'll find a place on the calendar this summer.
Great.
We'll get her in.
We will not be having anything else on the calendar this summer.
Just for 5 minutes.
Here's my calendar for the summer.
Yeah, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, is that you? Oh, geez, Jim.
He says,
Oh, and you wrote your name on it. Oh, look at it. No, 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 no. Zoom maybe.
I'm going to be in Newfoundland, and I just got Starlink, so I think it'll work. I'm going to be in Newfoundland
Internet in Canada.
How long?
the entire month of July.
They have internet
Oh,
up
boy.
there, don't
Oh, good for you.
they? They do. I was going to watch hockey.
Okay, let's, moving on. Nothing else? in ter-
Chair, I did receive a correspondence from Mr. Gallagher, who came and spoke with regards to the boat issue, thanking us for taking the opportunity to listen to him, and looks forward to hearing from us in the future. Well, thank you.
I did as well. A very nice letter.
We didn't get
Upcoming meetings, June 4th.
Do you want me to give any staff updates?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Wanna hear
Kathy.
from you.
Updates? Jumped right ahead.
The regional policy plan is being updated. And I sent you the power, yeah, I don't think it's, you don't need to have quite that face.
I'm sorry.
I think we're
Can
going to
you
be
say
okay.
that one more time?
I think we're going to be okay.
I just want to hear it. Can you say it one more time? Because
The regional policy plan
yes,
is
get
being
excited,
updated.
everybody.
So they're having a bunch of stakeholder meetings, kind of going through some of their proposed amendments and their recommendations. I went to a meeting on Monday. I did get the PowerPoint, and I sent it all to you guys individually. I don't think anything is too drastic as far as changing of the goals or the objectives that would be, impacting us and the work that we're doing here. They do have some different recommendations that you might want to look at and see if you are interested in commenting on. They were going to try and get together some type of financing and kind of funding team together about housing, which I think is a good idea. It kind of meshes a little bit with what we're trying to do with our mixed use. But the idea is that they would have a 60-day, they use this stakeholder input, finalize it, their draft for a 60-day review this summer, and then hopefully adopt it by the fall. They're not going to really be changing too much things with activity centers and that type of thing, but they are looking at up their thresholds. So I think if you have comments, and I sent the link on where to send comments to in the email, send comments about, if there's certain things that we want to do, let's increase the threshold so people don't have to go through DRI. So if you're looking for, some rental housing of a certain size or something, make that be something that doesn't have to go through a DRI. We're lucky a lot of our housing projects, we're part of the growth incentive zone, so that they didn't, like the Yarmouth Commons, Yarmouth Gardens didn't have to deal with that. So that information is in your mailbox waiting to be reviewed when you get home. I did have a conversation today with Paul Chaffee, who is our Director of Information Technology, about the app and
Hallelujah, Madam Chair.
the town website.
Double hallelujah.
So I guess the problem with the app is really
Oh.
Apple.
Please.
Well, I think it's true that they've been trying, and I guess there's certain things that have to happen for Apple to basically accept your app that gets written to put on their app store. And that's taking a long time. So they're looking at doing it another way and doing it through a Civic Plus app. A lot of other communities have it done that way. So they're hoping to move forward and have something in the works in 8 to 10 weeks instead of us having waited, 8 months or something for Apple to do something about it. Same token, they're also looking at with Civic Plus improvements to the website. So they would, and he says, well, if anybody has any ideas about what's wrong with, because I told him we have a local comprehensive action
Make
item.
it mobile friendly, that's what's wrong with it.
Mobile friendly is step
Well, there's
one.
that, and then I think there's just the town website is people, like, you can't find anything. I have difficulty finding stuff, and I,
And make it mobile friendly. Even if it's difficult, make it mobile friendly. At least it'll be mobile
they're doing
friendly and
that
difficult.
first. They're doing the app mobile friendly part first. But he asked if anybody had any comments about the town website and things that they could do to make it better, and I got his card. So any of you, he would be more than happy to hear from you. And you got to take one, Will. You've been most.
Well, no,
most
I'm just going to schedule a very pleasant meeting with him, and I'm gonna show him what I go through. I'm going to show him what I go through when I try to interact with the website.
He's all on board
Great.
with the app. It's what can be done with the town website
Oh, I'm with
when
you.
people log in to the website. So if you have any comments or ideas, I know that Peter, probably your number one comment is put current information up.
Well, yeah, and there's so many, I mean, if you Google planning board meeting minutes, you'll get the 2018 link.
Things like that he would love
So
to
many
know about.
layers that are no
And
longer relevant or
I know you had sent me an email with a lot of those things. So please help us help the town and any things that you have. And I also did mention the thing about how have someone do some beta testing and some, once you're making some changes, let's investigate and see if that's sufficient. And then the last one is the Ways to Water project that's being done by the Division of Natural Resources is moving forward, and they're having 2 public meetings. One is going to be on May 29th from 4 to 5:30 here in the hearing room, and also June 10th from 6 to 7:30 here in the hearing room. And apparently, they also have a survey. I don't know how to. Didn't give a link to it, but I got some flyers over there. So for people out there, I'm sure it's on the DNR website somewhere, they have a survey with regard to Ways to Water and then a couple public meetings on it. So that project is moving forward. That's like one of those things that you got to update if we can in the LCP because people are making a lot of great progress as we're moving forward. And that's it.
I'm glad you had me pause at staff update. Peter, you and I are going to be meeting with the consultants from Donahue Institute next Wednesday to talk about short-term rentals. They wanted to interview a couple of planning board members, so I have some of the history from when we started this way back when, why we had to have it, because there was no language originally in our zoning for it. And Kathy, I know Peter has already reached out to you in terms of what's the overlay. I know there's a buildup of the taxes.
Yep.
There's,
I think it's
you know,
14.45%
at the
total.
end. Yeah, at the end, at the bottom line,
Yeah, I will respond to that.
I'm going to go back and dig through some of my the background that we had going to town meeting. So we'll try to represent the board as best we can.
It's great.
Thank you for doing
Kathy,
that.
is there an RFP for what they're doing so I understand what their goal is?
There's a scope.
Yeah.
You want
Can you send that to me?
It would be interesting also, Madam Chair, given what Deirdre mentioned, is somehow if we could figure out what becomes of this project if there were no bids.
Oh, the housing
Who
authority?
do we talk to about it? I assume it's someone in your department, Kathy, but it might be helpful. Well, no, I mean, it's run through, oh, no, it's Yarmouth Housing Authority,
Housing
so sorry.
Authority.
I
So-
guess we'll have to wait for that puff of smoke.
And when we were walking out of the meeting, someone asked Drew Kraus, who is the housing authority person, what's going to happen, and he said, I don't know. He said, we're going to have a meeting this week, but, so they
Well,
must
Deirdre,
have
if you do
discussed
hear
it.
anything, would you
I
please
will certainly
tell us?
tell you,
Only
yeah.
because, sometimes people ask us, I don't know if anybody else has been asked, but someone asked me not too long ago. And I did say, well, it's a housing authority project, but yet it feels like it's everybody's project because everybody, it's come up at the sewer committee meeting, it's come up in a lot of different places.
Yeah.
So, interesting times. Thank you,
You might
Madam
not
Chair.
be too wrong if you say, nothing in my lifetime.
That's probably a very.
Now, Jim.
Okay, meetings, upcoming meetings, June 4th, June 18th, June 25th. So you'll be here for all of them, right?
No,
Jim,
I won't be here for June 4th. And then I won't be here
In July.
July and the August, I return
6th.
August 5th, so I may or may not be here August 6th. But again, if I have the ability to Zoom, I will participate remotely. Let
Appreciate
you
it.
see puffins and icebergs and stuff like that.
That's okay.
You driving up there?
Yeah, taking our RV.
Nice. Just as a reminder, I won't be able to attend on June 25th. It's the first night of camp.
Right. I think you had told us that. Okay. Any other business anyone wants to cover? Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you all.